Some people walk alone not because they're weak, but because their silence hides a power most will never understand. The discipline of self-containment doesn't start as a strength. It begins as a quiet survival mechanism, something people develop when they realize the world won't always offer them a hand to hold. People with no friends don't wake up one day choosing isolation. It's a gradual sharpening of the mind, a slow shift where they learn to operate without expecting emotional rescue. Most people panic at the thought of being alone, but those who live in solitude begin to confront parts of themselves others spend entire lifetimes avoiding. In the silence, they meet their flaws, their fears, their impulses, and they learn to manage them without external reassurance. This creates a psychological stability that's rare. While others collapse without attention or validation, they build an internal system that doesn't depend on anyone. They don't need constant feedback to know who they are. They don't need someone to tell them what they're worth. Their world becomes defined by their own decisions, their own thoughts, their own clarity. And that clarity becomes dangerous. It becomes the kind of strength that can't be shaken by rumors, judgment, or rejection. They've already lived through the storm of being alone, so nothing outside can scare them anymore. Most people avoid silence because silence exposes truth. But those with no friends learn to use that silence. They sit with it long enough to understand themselves in ways others never do. They don't escape into distractions, gossip, or noise. Instead, they confront the root of their emotions. They dissect their patterns. They observe their reactions, and slowly, their emotional world becomes something they can predict and command. It's not that they don't feel deeply. They just no longer get pulled around by every feeling that rises. Their solitude becomes discipline, their discipline becomes control, and that control is what sets them apart. When you're not dependent on anyone, nobody can manipulate you, nobody can pull you into drama, nobody can weaponize your insecurities against you. People with no friends develop a mental independence that's nearly unbreakable. They trust their instincts more than opinions. They follow logic more than pressure. They know how to function without applause, and that makes them incredibly hard to influence. In a world built on social expectations, someone who isn't controlled by them becomes unpredictable, and unpredictability is power. But it's not just emotional strength they gain. Solitude forces them into self-responsibility. There is no one else to blame, no one else to lean on, no one else to clean their mess. They learn to fix their own problems, manage their own chaos, and build their own stability. Over time, this creates a resilience that people with constant companionship rarely develop. When challenges come, they don't look around for someone to save them. They look inward, they act, they endure, and they keep moving. This is why people with no friends often intimidate others without even trying. There's something unsettling about someone who doesn't need anyone. Someone who doesn't break under silence. Someone who can sit alone for hours and emerge sharper than before. Their strength is quiet, but it's not soft. It's forged, not given. It's earned in moments nobody sees. While others chase approval, they chase understanding. While others fear solitude, they master it. While others lean on the world, they build their own. And it's that mastery of emotion, of thought, of self that becomes their hidden weapon. Silent, steady, unbreakable. Hyper-observation doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It grows in the gaps where most people fill their lives with noise, chatter, and constant distraction. People with no friends move through the world quietly, and in that quiet, their senses sharpen. They're not busy performing for others, not busy trying to fit in, not busy scanning the room for approval. Their mind is free from the clutter that crowds most people's attention, so they begin to notice everything. Every small shift, every hidden intention, every silent tension. What others miss, they absorb effortlessly. Most people listen to words. People who spend time alone listen to everything else. The change in tone, the hesitation before a lie, the micro-expression that flashes for half a second, the forced smile, the restless hands, the subtle energy when someone enters a room. Because they're not distracted by social obligations, their mind becomes a kind of scanner, quiet, precise, always logging details, and the more time they spend in solitude, the more intense this awareness becomes. They read situations faster, they sense danger sooner, they feel dishonesty like a shift in the air. They understand people without ever having to ask them anything. This ability often makes them appear distant or detached, but the truth is they see too much. They pick up on patterns long before others even realize there are patterns at all. They understand how someone behaves when they want something, when they're hiding something, when they're pretending. They see the psychology under the surface. And once you can see what someone really wants, not what they say, not what they show, but what they want, you hold an advantage that most never even realize exists. Hyper-observers rarely talk first. They don't reveal much. They don't rush to fill silence. And this is where their power grows. When you don't talk, people expose themselves. They reveal their insecurities, their habits, their motives. They project everything onto the quiet person, thinking silence means ignorance. But silence, for these individuals, is study. They sit back and watch as others unknowingly hand them all the information they need. Every confession, every contradiction, every vulnerability. It's all right there for the taking. What makes this trait even more powerful is that it's not aggressive, it's passive, subtle, undetectable. No one sees it happening. They're not interrogating anyone. They're not analyzing out loud. They simply observe. And the mind collects the truth piece by piece until the entire picture becomes impossible to hide. This is why people with no friends often navigate life more carefully, more intelligently, more strategically. They see the traps. They see the patterns that repeat. They see the consequences before they arrive. They aren't guessing, they're noticing. And when they finally speak, people listen because they speak with precision. They say what's accurate, not what's expected. They don't throw random opinions into the air like everyone else. They speak after watching everything, after understanding everything, after connecting dots others didn't even notice were dots. Their words carry weight because they come from observation, not insecurity. What others consider a weakness, being alone, slowly transforms into one of the sharpest psychology tools a person can develop. A mind that watches more than it speaks becomes a mind that understands more than it reveals. And a mind that understands is a mind that cannot be easily fooled. They don't need to control others. They simply see them, clearly, deeply, completely. Eyes open, mind sharp, nothing missed. Emotional immunity doesn't come from strength at first. It comes from absence. When there's no one around to clap for you, no one to reassure you, no one to tell you you're doing fine, you eventually stop looking for it. The loneliness that feels heavy in the beginning slowly transforms into a strange kind of mental clarity. You begin to realize that your worth cannot be rooted in someone else's reaction. You start defining yourself on your own terms, not on the shifting moods and opinions of others. Most people don't even realize how controlled they are by approval. A laugh, a compliment, a little validation. It changes their mood instantly. They depend on it, they chase it. They shape their identity around how others perceive them. People with few or no friends don't have that luxury. They aren't constantly being told who they are. They aren't softened by praise or steered by judgment. Instead, they learn to sit with their own evaluation of themselves, raw, honest, and unfiltered. And this does something unusual to the mind. It builds a backbone where most people only have reflexes. Instead of reacting to every comment, every emotion, every opinion, they learn to separate noise from truth. They learn to pause before responding. They learn that not every attack is worth answering, and not every compliment is worth absorbing. Emotional immunity doesn't mean they don't feel. It means they don't collapse. Over time, you start to see how powerful this becomes. Someone criticizes them. It doesn't sink in deep enough to break them. Someone praises them. It doesn't become a chain around their identity. They stop being swayed by the highs and lows that control most people's lives. Their sense of self becomes something internal, not external. And when your inner world becomes your anchor, the outside world loses its power over you. This kind of independence makes many people uncomfortable. We live in a world where emotional dependence is normal. People consult others before making decisions. They wait for approval before taking action. They need reassurance before believing they can succeed. But when someone doesn't need any of that, they stand out in a way that feels almost unnatural. unpredictable, uncontrolled. You can't manipulate someone who isn't hungry for validation. You can't pressure someone who doesn't need to belong. You can't intimidate someone who doesn't fear disapproval. That is why individuals with no friends often appear colder, stronger, or harder to read. Their emotional landscape isn't easily influenced. They've lived too long without applause to need it now. They've built too much stability inside themselves to let someone else's opinion shake it. This doesn't mean they're emotionless. It means their emotions serve them, not the world around them. And when you are no longer controlled by the need to be accepted, something remarkable happens. You become honest. Not rude, not reckless, honest. You start making choices that align with who you are, not who others want you to be. You stop bending yourself to fit into places you've outgrown. You stop shrinking your voice to make others comfortable. You stop pretending. Emotional independence frees you to be real in a world full of masks. People with no friends often evolve into individuals who have nothing to hide because there's no audience to impress. Their strength is subtle, but undeniable. They walk differently. They speak differently. They carry a sense of self that doesn't wobble, and that stability is rare. It's the kind of strength that intimidates even those who don't understand why they feel intimidated. They don't need validation. They don't need permission. They don't need applause. Their power comes from within, and once it forms, nothing from the outside can break it. Untouched, unaffected, unmoved. A mind built for depth isn't formed in crowded rooms or loud conversations. It takes shape in the quiet spaces where most people never dare to sit. People with no friends spend long stretches in their own company, and in that solitude, the mind begins to travel inward, without constant interruptions, without the pull of someone else's needs, without the noise of superficial talk. Their thoughts stretch further. They explore ideas instead of distractions. They follow truth instead of trends. They begin to understand the layers of themselves, the parts most people rush past because they're too busy trying to keep up with everyone else. Solitude gives them time, and time gives them depth. While others look outward for entertainment, validation, or escape, they look inward. They examine their decisions. They question their beliefs. They trace their emotions back to their root. They don't just feel. They understand why they feel. They don't just react. They recognize the mechanics behind every reaction. This creates a level of self-awareness most people never develop, because most people don't sit with themselves long enough to see who they really are. And this depth spills into everything they do. They don't think in quick answers or shallow conclusions. They process. They study patterns. They notice the unseen links between thoughts, behaviors, and consequences. They don't jump to decisions just to relieve pressure. They arrive at decisions with clarity. There's no rush to impress anyone, no need to compete for attention, no audience to perform for. Their mind becomes a place where ideas can grow without interruption. This gives them an unusual advantage. They can imagine possibilities others overlook. They can focus for long periods without needing stimulation. They can create, build, analyze, and solve because their mind isn't constantly tied to the emotional noise of friendships and social groups. They have mental space, something rare, something powerful, something that shapes them into people who think differently from the world around them. And that difference can be intimidating. Depth always is. When someone thinks deeper than others, they become unpredictable. They don't fall for surface-level manipulation. They see the bigger picture instead of the momentary feelings. They act from long-term understanding instead of short-term impulse. They can sit alone for hours without losing themselves. They can dive into thoughts that others would avoid because the truth inside them is too heavy. They are comfortable with that weight. People who avoid solitude often fear their own mind. Being alone forces them to confront their emptiness, their insecurities, their unresolved pain. But those with no friends face it. They walk straight into it. And every time they do, they come out sharper, stronger, more aware. Their mind becomes a tool forged in quiet battles no one else sees. This is why their creativity feels different, why their insights hit deeper, why their presence carries a quiet intensity. They're not distracted by the constant need to connect. They're not diluted by noise. Their inner world is rich, layered, and strong. While others spend their energy trying to fit in, They spend theirs building an internal universe that doesn't depend on anyone. Over time, their thoughts develop gravity. Depth becomes identity. Silence becomes power. And their mind becomes something most people will never fully understand, because it was shaped in a place few people ever visit. Solitude without fear. They think beyond. They see beyond. They grow beyond. Deep mind, quiet fire, hidden strength. Power grows in silence. And one day, the world will realize who was watching the whole time.